According to Dave Mustaine, the previously announced expanded version of Metallica's 1982 demo, No Life Til Leather, has been indefinitely shelved because he is unwilling to give Lars Ulrich credit for something that not only the Metallica drummer did not do but he was incapable of doing. Asked in a new interview with Greece's Rock Hard magazine about the songwriting dispute that has led to the expanded version of No Life Til Leather being apparently scrapped, Mustaine said, "I'm not gonna give Lars my credit, so I'm not gonna be part of it. I wrote all of Mechanix, I wrote all of Jump in the Fire, so me giving any percentage of that to Lars Ulrich, he can pound sand. And as far as the song Phantom Lord, I wrote every note of that music. James, Hetfield, Metallica frontman, wrote all the lyrics. That's 50-50. If James wants to give his percentage up to Lars because he is afraid of him, that's up to him. I'm not afraid of Lars Ulrich, and I'm not giving him my percentage. And the same thing with Metal Militia, I wrote every single note of that music, James wrote every note of that lyric, that's 50-50. If James wants to give Lars his percentage, that's fine if he's afraid of him. I'm not afraid of him. I'm not giving nothing to Lars Ulrich." Now, they took it in the past, apparently referring to Metallica's Kill 'Em All debut album, which features re-recorded versions of the songs from No Life Til Leather. Everybody knows that, and the past is the past. But I could not willingly enter into a new agreement with these guys predicated on Lars getting credit for something that not only he did not do but he was incapable of doing. He was incapable of writing good songs back then. Asked if that means that there will never be another concert featuring the so-called Big Four of 1980s thrash metal, Metallica, Megadeth, Slayer and Anthrax, Mustaine said, "Oh, I don't know about that. That has nothing to do with the Big Four. I think Lars is just afraid to play with Megadeth." Dave Mustaine recently talked about guitarist Kiko Loureiro joining Megadeth after following a period of turmoil within the band, and how he helped record Megadeth's Grammy Award-winning album Dystopia, which was released back in 2016. This is what he said.
So I finally I contacted a drummer and I said, "Would you come out here and just lay down some session tracks?" And I'd been looking for guitar players, and it had been 4 months of auditioning guitar players, and I called my management. I said, "Please send me another list," and I went all the way down the list, and I get to the very last name, and it's Kiko Loureiro, and I'm thinking, it could have been Pancho Villa for all I care, because, you know, I'm looking at that name, and I'm thinking, no. So then I click on YouTube, and it's this gorgeous Brazilian guy that just absolutely destroys on guitar, and I call up Ellefson, and I go, "I found him. Found him." He goes, "Who is it?" And I said, "It's Kiko Loureiro, or Loureiro." And he goes, "Oh, I know that dude. I played with him." And I said, "What? I'm going to kill you, Ellefson."
So why do you hold back that information?
That's why he only has 4 strings.
So you reached out to him, and David already knew him and played with him?
He did know him, and he didn't tell me, so I was pretty upset. So he comes out here, and we go to Puckett's, and we're just talking, and I go back to my house, and the phone rings, and take a phone call, and he picks up an acoustic guitar, and he starts playing that Carmela Brunello, whatever that song is, you know, the whatever, and he's doing these just, and I'm flashing back to when I was in the studio with Marty, and I was just getting intimidated, and I was starting to get really freaked out, and I thought, you know what, he's out here for you, don't worry about it, and so we didn't play a note together. He went home, I hired him on the spot, he came out, we did the record, got my first Grammy, and the rest is history. Best guitar player I played with so far.
Looking back on his past regrets in life, Megadeth mastermind Dave Mustaine singled out a few events he's not too proud of, one of them being punching fellow frontman James Hetfield of Metallica back in the day. You look back in hindsight and you think, God, I probably should have done that differently. But, see, that's the importance of when you have someone in your life as a role model to help you. There's an ancient Asian proverb that says, "A smart man learns from his mistakes, but a wise man learns from the mistakes of others." Who knows? That may be from the book of Proverbs. I don't know where it originated from, but I would rather learn from your mistakes than my mistakes, because it's less painful that way. I think that, because I've shared my life and a lot of the things that I've done right and wrong, it's helped a lot of our fans in their personal lives, and definitely a lot of musicians too. Because, I've been doing this for 30 years, and it's fairly obvious to anybody that has a brain that people have been trying to hold me back," he added. A few years back, Dave explained the early day Metallica fight and how he turned James' mouth into a pile of bloody sheetlets, an excerpt from Dave Mustaine's autobiography called Mustaine, a heavy metal memoir. The excerpt is where Mustaine discussed the punch that led to Metallica firing him. This is what he wrote. "The actual fight didn't happen right there. They call it a hang fire, like when there's an unexpected delay between the trigger of a gun being pulled and the actual discharge of the weapon. You know it's coming, and there's no stopping it. It's just a matter of time." James and I alternately cursed at each other and refused to speak until eventually we were both in Ron's house, preparing to rehearse, and tensions boiled over. There was another round of accusations and insults, more cursing, more threats. "You keep talking like that, I'm going to punch you in the mouth," I said. In the middle of this exchange, Ron walked out of the bathroom and into the living room. He and James went way back, and despite the fact that James often treated him like shit, Ron instinctively defended his friend. "You hit him, you'll have to hit me first." "Shut up and sit the fuck down," I said. And then James jumped to Ron's defense. "You touch him, you're going to have to hit me first." Jesus, I thought, what is this, some kind of fucking game show? I realized I would have to make a decision. "Okay, you win," I said, and with that I threw a right cross that landed flush against James' face, turning his mouth into a pile of bloody sheetlets. In an interesting interview, Total Guitar caught up with Megadeth frontman Dave Mustaine talking about the album He Sells, But Who's Buying, and how he does not like playing certain songs because they contain black magic. He said, performance-wise, The Conjuring is one of the heaviest songs on the record, but unfortunately it's got black magic in it, and I promised that I wouldn't play it anymore because there's a lot of instructions for hexes in that song. Although it seems kind of corny, anybody who's a Wiccan or a warlock or anything like that will know that all of that stuff is instrumental. When I got into black magic, I put a couple of spells on people when I was a teenager, and it haunted me forever, and I've had so much torment. People say, "God damn, Dave never gets a break, he's had such a hard life," and I just think, no, Dave didn't. He got into black magic, and it's ruined his life. It wasn't that I was a bad guy, or that I had a big mouth, it was that I got into witchcraft and black magic, and it's ruined my life. Fortunately for me, with all the work and the love of my friends, and not giving up with my guitar playing, I got over it. So I look back now and I think, I don't want to play The Conjuring. I look at songs like Black Friday and I think that would be a good song to play, too, but I look at the lyrics, which are about a homicidal madman who goes on a killing spree. Now, the irony of all of this is that I said I wasn't going to play it, but we've got the 25-year anniversary coming up, and people are saying we have to do this record. And I'm thinking that I can't possibly do that and stay true to myself. But I'm sure where there's a will, there's a way. When I first got saved about 10 years ago, I was really scared, and I was basically holding on to anything that I heard in church, or whatever. But as I've grown, I've learned a lot and lightened up a lot. And I see people around me doing certain things, and instead of me saying, "Man, you shouldn't do that," I think quietly to myself, "Dude, you don't know what you're doing." It's a huge growth process. Dave Mustaine discussed Marty Friedman's departure from Megadeth, telling Axis one of the main reasons Marty Friedman left Megadeth was because of the solo in Breadline off 1999's Risk. That was a song where Marty wanted to do the solo so badly. And he did, but when we got the song back our management said, "We don't like the solo." Marty was already gone, so I agreed to redo it. But I told them they'd have to tell Marty they didn't like his solo and wanted it redone, because I knew it was gonna cause problems. So then we're sitting in the control room and the song comes on. Everyone's there, we're all excited. I'm fat, dumb, and happy because I think they told Marty it would be my solo, not his. So the song comes up, and there's my solo. Dave Ellefson and I look over at Marty, and he's got tears coming down his face. I was like, oh my god. You didn't tell him. I felt terrible. Those are the little things that just fuck everything up. People don't see that part of it. They think it's my fault. I mean, sure, I had a part in it, yeah. But who forgot to tell him? Dave Mustaine also talked about all the lineup changes Megadeth went through over the years, saying that Marty Friedman had a nervous breakdown when leaving Megadeth. "It's no fun having to replace musicians. It's hard because, along with having to replace the person in the band, you usually end up having the personality loss. And very rarely do guys leave on good terms. Marty Friedman had a nervous breakdown and he quit. And I remember, it was like, did I do this?" And David Ellefson has told me after the fact everything that was going on with Marty before that happened, so I'm very happy to know it wasn't me. And a lot of the other guys, when you have to let them go, you know, it's really hard to fire somebody and remain friends with them. Unfortunately, we had to let some guys go. It's not because I don't love them, and it's not because they're not good. It's because what our vision was not a common goal anymore. I mean, there were a couple of situations where one guy called up my fiancé and said, "I fantasize about being with you when I'm with my girlfriend." And I thought, oh, you're fired. Giving the nu metal genre quite a bashing, Megadeth frontman Dave Mustaine noted he'd rather have his eyelids pulled out than listen to the popular late 90s style nu metal. Telling Faster Louder how happy he is for the new wave of modern musicians, calling them a new breed of players. With all these new vocal styles, Dave focused on the past, adding, "They had this wave of metal that came through in the 90s, and it was called nu metal. I don't know if you remember it, but it was so bad. I would have rather had my eyelids pulled out." Asked if it's Limp Bizkit and Linkin Park he's talking about, Mustaine explained, No, I can't even remember their names. Linkin Park, those guys are good at what they do. I have no problems with those guys. But I wouldn't call them nu metal. Pinpointing the groups he has issues with, he continued, "I'm talking about the bands that wouldn't do guitar solos. Guys who get out there and they do rhythms and stuff, but they'd never do a guitar solo. It's like, come on, play a solo." But apparently solos aren't cool. It's just funny, because I come from the school of AC/DC and Led Zeppelin, and man, the riff had to be kick-ass, the lyrics had to make sense, and when it was time for the solo had to rip your face off, Dave said. And hey, I may not be part of the family anymore, right at the forefront, but I'm the crazy uncle. Dave Mustaine also let loose on nu metal bands during an interview with Cry of the Wolf, saying, "During that whole period a couple of years ago, when no one was doing guitar solos, we had a couple of bands go out with us, and I despised them. And the reason they went out with us was because the label said you need to do this. That was the worst part of my career during that whole nu metal thing. You know, there were no solos, because the guitar players weren't good enough to do solos." In an interview with the self-proclaimed libertarian Alex Jones on Infowars.com, Megadeth's Dave Mustaine opened up about his thoughts on playing with Satanic bands. Dave Mustaine, a born Christian, talked about setting the ground rules on who he would or would not share the stage with. According to him, he said, "If I do play, there's certain things I kind of want to veer away from. I don't want to play with any Satanic bands." He narrowed it down a bit further, saying, "I'll play with bands that have darkness in them, because we all have a little darkness in us, or we wouldn't be human. But guys that are confessed Satanists, I don't really have time for that. I can control my emotions, because I know it's not the sinners, it's the sin." He also talked about his refusal to share the stage with the openly satanic Swedish metal act Dissection at an Israeli festival back in 2005, saying,
"The truth of the matter is that when I first had gotten, my life back in order back in 2002, I had made some changes. I had a severe injury to my arm, and when my career had stopped, it made me really take a hard, sideways look at everything. And I figured, you know what, just for now, because I don't really know a lot about what I'm doing, I want to make sure that I don't play with any bands that have junkies in them, because I can't be around, guys that are doing heroin because of the temptation. Mm-hmm. And because, I'm trying to have something in my life that is a power greater than myself, so that I'll get myself back in shape. And I don't want to be hanging around with guys that are going to, be dangerous for me spiritually. And because I had just decided that, I was going to start following a spiritual path, I figured, I don't want to go back, because I was into witchcraft and black magic and everything like that, so I know about that stuff, and I figured, I'm just going to try and avoid that stuff. never said that I hated anybody, just didn't want to play with them. And I was so curious to see the poster for the concert because it was written in the Hebrew font or script, whatever you call it. And then I saw the band Dissection, and I thought, well, that's a cool name. And I looked it up, and I went, uh-oh. So I told the promoter, I said, look, we can't play. We're not going to play that festival. I never said kick them off.
Well, yeah, of
That
course,
was
yeah.
That was the promoter's mistake. The promoter kicked them off. And it's hard enough as it is in music to get concerts, so I would never kick a band off one of my shows.
Yeah,
I would rather me not do it. And when I said, look, we don't want to do it, they unfortunately harmed that band, regardless whether the guy was a convicted murderer, he was a satanic person. We all have a little bit of darkness in us. Now, I've never killed anybody, killed a couple of guitars, but, I've never killed anybody. And the sad thing is, at the end of the day, the poor guy had committed suicide. So, he was a tortured soul. And I know that for me, the reason that I turned to black magic and witchcraft and stuff like that was I had spiritual abuse, and so many things had been done wrong in my life, and there was so much hypocrisy with the people that had said that they were Christians or whatever, Catholic, whatever, the people in my life. They would say one thing and they would do something else. So I really regretted having spent any time in a church, and I really resented people who said that they believed in God, because you would see them do one thing and then the next day they would do something else, and it's just very confusing as a kid. And I think that's why a lot of us end up being spiritually misled. Probably part of the reason why that poor chap did that too. But we were supposed to play a show with them in France, and they didn't get kicked off that show. A lot of stuff went around about another band that had a name that was kind of offensive to me. But that's a personal thing. It has nothing to do with the band, their quality of music.
Yeah, but you can expect the producer of a show to cancel Megadeth when it's standing right opposed to Dissection or Rotting Christ, because those are little bands, and Megadeth is that's a Megadeth. Huge band that's Megadeth. So
I know, but guys, what you got to understand is my heart for those guys has nothing to do. My decision not to play with them doesn't have anything to do with their value and worth as people, because I'm sure they're probably really great people. Sometimes we name our band stuff to get a reaction out of people, and it's not really who or what we are. And, there are bummers. There are consequences. Naming Megadeth, I can't even tell you how offensive it was. There's a huge radio station in Los Angeles called KLOS. And we had done a song, and after the song was over, they go, and that was a cover of an old Alice Cooper song. Coming up next, they didn't even say our name. Mm-hmm. They wouldn't say Megadeth on the radio. So it has nothing to do with the person's worth or anything like that, because I believe we're all valuable, and it's just a personal preference that I had at the time. I've learned a lot more now. So, if the opportunity came up to play with bands that were contrary to what my personal, political, spiritual, or any kind of moral values that I have, that's something between me and my relationship with God, and I don't push that on anybody anymore. At the beginning, I didn't know, and I wanted to play it safe. And I think that anybody who would judge me and say, oh, well, you know what, Dave made a huge mistake. He just joined a new club, and he didn't know all the rules, so instead of breaking the rules, he said, fuck you to everybody. That's not me, man. I like to do things right. So I played it safe. I learned a lot about it, and I've opened my mind up to it.